Hi, another video. This one's called Trig Part 2. Sokoto one, it was supposed to be Trig Part 1, but for some reason the edge elastic wouldn't accept that. So if you haven't already watched the Sokoto video, go back, exit this, watch the Sokoto video because that comes first. Okay, so this relates directly to that Sokoto. We'll be using the Sokoto. Alright, so let me switch to document camera. Alright, Trig Part 2. So on the test, when you have the test, you are going to have some problems where you have to find, well, and doing these problems actually, where you have to find like sine of 25. You could actually put those in the calculator and get a decimal for them. And then we have what we're doing today, which is a little bit new, is inverse trig function. So just to really quick show you how to find these. Sine of 25, all you have to do is press the sine button, press 25, press equals, and you get a long decimal. Or if you have the iPhone type calculator, you press 25, then you press sine, and it should give you a decimal. Alright, so I'm going to write the decimal. I'm going to write it to, I think, 4 spaces. On the test, I believe you're going to have to write it to 3 spaces. But if I look, it's 0.42261, so that's 0.4226. That 6 stays a 6, is closest to 6. So 0.4226, and there we go. Okay, you're going to have some problems where you just do that on the test. Cosine 25. Okay, so cosine button, 25 equals. Notice it's different. The different trig functions have different values. Okay, so it is important that you press the correct one. Okay, they're not interchangeable. If you have the other type of calculator, 25 cosine, you get the same decimal. And it's 0.90630, so 3 stays a 3. 0.9063. Okay, and then tangent of 25, so tangent 25 or 25 tangent, depending on your calculator, 0.46630. Okay, that's how to do that. And you're going to have questions like that on your test. They're going to give you a trig function, they're going to give you a number, they're going to want a decimal. Okay, and make sure to read the directions on how to find the correct decimal. Okay, today we're doing inverse trig functions. So inverse uses this little -1 to show kind of like reciprocal. So remember, negative exponents flip fractions from when we did the exponent unit. Okay, so negative exponent there, that -1, means that we're doing the reciprocal. We're not going to flip this fraction. We're doing the opposite of this. Instead of having the angle here and getting a length, here we're going to have the length here, our fraction, our ratio. Our ratio goes here, and we're going to get an angle degree. And these ones are usually to the nearest degree. They don't usually tell you to round the degree to the nearest tenth. So how to do this? Inverse sine. Let me see if I can get really close on my calculator. Okay, notice right above my sine, I have a sine with a -1. Right above my cosine, I have a cosine with a -1. Right above my tangent, I have tangent of -1. And then I have a piece of crumb. So let me get rid of that because that's distracting me. Okay, so sine, cosine, tangent, and then they're inverse. So to get the inverse sine, you have to press your shift button. My shift button is IM2. So I would press that. So now notice my calculator says sine of -1. Of course, if you have the other type of calculator, you will not see the sine of -1, but you will have to press shift in order to use it. Okay, and then I press, well, my equation was 3/5. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. I have a parentheses button on here. Let me go back to calculator here. I have a parentheses button here. So I'm going to put parentheses. and I have 3 divided by 5 in my parentheses, so I close my parentheses. So it gives me the decimal. That decimal is basically the 3 divided by 5. So I still have to do the inverse sign. So to do that, I press my equal sign, and it gives me a decimal. It says 36.8, which is really close to 37. So for a sine of 3 over 5, I'm going to write 37 degrees. Okay, so we use inverse trig functions to find the angle. A little bit more. There we go. Okay, so the regular functions are to find lengths of sides on a right triangle. The inverse trig function doing this is to find the acute angle on a right triangle. Okay, so cosine, inverse cosine, doing the same thing. Inverse cosine, I press my shift button in cosine, so I get my inverse cosine. And then I do 3 divided by 5 in parentheses. And then I press equals to get my degree. So it's 53.1, which is really close to 53, so we're going to keep it at 53 degrees. Okay. Tangents, inverse tangents, same fraction. Okay, so shift tangent gives me my inverse tangent. My fraction goes in parentheses, 3 divided by 5. Press equals, and I get 30.9. That's really close to 31, so I would say 31 degrees. Okay, so you're going to have some problems like that on your test. So you want to make sure they're going to be just like this. I mean, different numbers, obviously, but you do them the exact same way. Here you get a decimal, here you get a whole number. Okay. Now for the examples, we have to find the variable, whatever the variable is. Now if your variable is a Greek symbol, theta, which I talked about in the SOHCAHTOA video, they use theta as a variable for an angle. So whenever you see that, it's like an O with a line through it. That's called theta. It's a Greek symbol. It's a variable for an angle. All right. So example 1. What I do, I start with my SOHCAHTOA. Where should I write that? I'll write it right here. SOHCAHTOA. Okay. So I have that, and I want to look at my viewpoint. So if you should have seen the SOHCAHTOA video already, because if you didn't stop this and watch the SOHCAHTOA video, you're going to be a little lost. So SOHCAHTOA video first. Right. So once you have the viewpoints, your viewpoint is wherever your angle that is labeled. So in this case, my viewpoint is right here. Okay. The right angle always points to the hypotenuse, but we have to label our O's and our A's. And we label our O's and our A's, our opposite and adjacent, based off our viewpoint. So we're standing here at angle X. That is our viewpoint. Opposite is across the street. So if you're standing here and you're looking across the street, you're looking at this side. This side is opposite. That means this side is your adjacent. Okay. So doing this problem, we have an H for hypotenuse and an A for adjacent. So we have to look. Does this have an H and an A? No, it has an H and an O. Does this have an H and an A? Yes, but it's A first, then H. So this is the function that we're going to use, CAH, C-A-H. So that means that CAH, just to review our SOHCAHTOA, cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Okay. Cosine and the angle. So in this case, I'll have cosine. My angle is called X. So I'll put X right there, equals, and it's A over H. So I didn't leave myself much room. Let me rewrite this a little bit more down. Cosine of X equals A first, then H in our fraction. Okay, so that means A goes on the top of the fraction, H goes on the bottom, 13 over 19. Okay, but we can't find cosine of an x. We don't know what to do. So this is where we switch to inverse. So to switch to inverse, when we switch things up, so we have to switch their order basically. When we do that, the cosine changes to a -1 cosine. Okay, cosine with that exponent of -1. And then we write the fraction next to it. Equals x. Some people skip this first step and just do this automatically. And if you can do that, that's great. But if that confuses you, just stick with the normal formula, and then when you switch, when your variable is in the degree spot and you need to switch to make our degree alone, then you have to do that -1 with the cosine. Okay? So once you do the -1 with the cosine, that's where you use your calculator. So my -1 with the cosine is inverse cosine, or shift cosine, depending on your calculator. I have 13 divided by 19. So in parentheses, I want to put 13 divided by 19. I could close my parentheses. And that's the decimal you get for 13 divided by 19. It's probably a never-ending decimal. Don't clear your calculator and just put in part of it. Keep it like this. And if you have an iPhone type calculator, do 13 divided by 19, get that decimal, then press your shift cosine. Or some calculators call it arc cosine or a cosine. Okay, so now I press equals and I get 46.8. I did not say whether to find the whole degree or not. Degrees we usually write as a whole number. So 46.8 is really close to 47. So then I would write x equals 47 degrees. If we have a length of a side, we usually make that a decimal. Just make sure to read the directions of the assignment on whether it wants a whole degree or a decimal for something, the nearest tenth, the nearest hundredth, certain numbers after the decimal, whatever the wording is in the problem, make sure to follow that. Okay, example 2. As you can see, we have a degree here. Our viewpoint is right here. That's our viewpoint. So we start by labeling. The right angle always points to the hypotenuse. That's always the one I do first. And then we have this 37 degree angle is our viewpoint. So if we're standing here at 37, remember across the street is opposite, and then the other side is adjacent. So for doing our SOHCAHTOA, to figure out which formula we're going to use, look at what information you have. I have my angle here, which I already labeled the sides based off that. I have my x, which is a hypotenuse, h. I have 58, which is O for opposites. So I have an H and an O. And if I look, this has an H and an O together. So we're going to use SOH. Okay, SOH. Sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. Sine of the angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. We can't have, if you notice our variable is not in the degree spot, so we just solved this the same as we did in the SOHCAHTOA video. Okay, we can't, we don't need to do any inverse. But we can't have x in the denominator. So to get x out of the denominator, if we multiply both sides by x, that cancels out and we get x, let me switch colors here, x times sine of 37. You don't split those two up. The x doesn't go after either because it's not part of the sine, so it's x times sine of 37 equals 58. We need x to be alone, so whatever's being multiplied to it, we divide. both sides by sine of 37. It has to stay sine of 37. There we go. So we get x equals 58 divided by sine of 37, and that's going to give us a number. So, and it's a length of a side, so we're going to give it a decimal, just to be more accurate. Plus, I forgot to write down what you would do. So on the assessment, on the assignments, you would have to the nearest, probably 10th, usually. So here we have 58 divided by sine of 37. So 58 divided by sine of 37 equals, so you should get 96 point, and if you notice that 0.3 is closer to a 4, so 96.4. There we go. Okay, one more problem. Okay, last problem for this lesson. Here we have theta. Theta is our angle. It's our acute angle. So that's going to be our viewpoint. Okay. I'm going to write my SOHCAHTOA. Get that ready. Opposite the right angle. Right angle points to the hypotenuse. We're at the viewpoint of theta. This is where we're standing. If we're standing here, that means across the street is our opposite, and our next door neighbor is our adjacent. So if you look at the information that we have nothing on the hypotenuse, but we have something on the opposite side, O, and we have something on the adjacent side, A. So we need something with an O and an A. Something with an O and an A. So if we look, this does not have an O and an A. This one does not have an O and an A. This one has an O and an A. So we're going to use TOA, tangents. Tangent of the angle equals opposite over adjacent. Okay, so we set it up. Tangent of the angle, this angle is called theta, equals opposite over adjacent. O is 7, A is 4, 7 over 4. Since our variable is in the degree spot, we have to switch those. Okay, so we're still going to have tangent. It's just we have to switch, which makes it tangent with the -1. We put our fraction next to that, equals our variable. So our variable is lone. That's how we get the variable lone, when it's stuck next to a trig. Okay, we have to do the switching and change it to the inverse, -1. So now we just solve. Use calculator. Okay, so tangent, inverse tangent, or for those of you with the other kind of phone, you do 7 divided by 4 first and get that decimal, and then do inverse tangent. So inverse tangent, and then my fraction goes in parentheses, 7 divided by 4. I messed up somewhere, something happened. Okay, tangent, inverse tangent. In parentheses, 7 divided by 4, close my parentheses. So I have inverse tangent of my decimal. So since we're finding an angle, we want the nearest whole number. 60.2 is closer to 60. So this is 60 degrees. Okay, that is what you're going to have to do on this assignment. You're going to have to solve for your variable wherever it's located, and if it happens to be located in an angle spot, you have to do the inverse. A lot of this is calculator work, so practice those calculators. So you need calculator skills when you get to integrated 3. You need trig skills when you get to integrated 3 too. Okay, so that is the end of this video.